What's up, YouTube? This is Carrie with Side Tripping with Carrie. Today we are at Paradise Memorial Gardens in Scottsdale, Arizona. We're going to be visiting the final resting place of B-movie legend Acquanetta. Now, Acquanetta was as I said before, a B-movie actress. She was active in the 1940s and 1950s. She mainly acted in jungle type movies. She was in Jungle Woman, Captive, Wild Woman. One of her biggest roles was Tarzan and the Leopard Woman. And she was also in this movie called Dead Man's Eyes with Lon Chaney Jr. And I actually saw that movie on Svengoolie, which you guys might be able to pick up on your local MeTV station. And I also saw Captive Wild Woman as well. Acquanetta was born in well, let me just start by saying everything about Acquanetta's origins are murky, okay? And it wasn't an accident, purposely so. She more than likely, well, you know what, I'm not even gonna do it more than likely. She was an African-American woman, okay? Her real name was Mildred Davenport. She was born in South Carolina, and she grew up in Pennsylvania. She came from kind of a prominent African-American family, and her brother, Horace, the Honorable Horace Davenport, who also happened to be a fraternity brother of mine, died in, I believe, 2017, and he was a judge, he was the first African-American judge in his particular county in Pennsylvania. I believe it was Montgomery County. But his family was very prominent. Their family was very prominent in the African-American community around Philadelphia. I don't even want to call it evidence, but I'm going to put a picture up of Acquanetta's sister, and you can see the family resemblance. But you got to understand, this was a period of time when many fair-skinned or light-skinned African-Americans passed, or at least some of them did. And passing is kind of a, I don't know, it can be a kind of a weighty subject for African-American folks. And what passing means is that you are African-American, but you're trying to pass for white. So again, this happened back in the days of segregation. You have to remember, this was a time period when African Americans were treated as second-class citizens, and some people passed to try to further their careers and whatnot, and so they would essentially deny who they were to try to be someone else. And the crazy thing about it was, you can go back and look at newspaper articles in the 20s, 30s, 40s, where these newspaper articles and stories would come out about people caught passing and what a tragedy it was. I mean, there have been Hollywood movies about, probably the most well-known is Imitation of Life, where one of the characters is found out to have African-American ancestry, and I swear it's like a fate worse than death. It's like finding out you had cancer. And so you could probably tell from the tone of my voice how insulting that is to someone who is African-American. And I guess personally for me, for someone that's fair-skinned and light-skinned themselves, to see somebody, live their life and really kind of deny who they were. Now, with that being said, I understand this was a different time. Acquanetta, or Mildred, was born in the 20s, and she came to fame in this segregated time, and she did what she had to do to make a name for herself and try to survive in that Hollywood system. So again, she was kind of in these jungle movies, but it's interesting that the way she started out, or the way she was discovered, was she went to college. She went to West Virginia State College for Negroes, which is now West Virginia State University, which is a historically black college or university, a HBCU. And she was a very beautiful woman. You will see that from the pictures. And she had a level of fame and as a model, and then she moved to New York and became a model, and she was noticed around town and because of her beauty. And eventually kind of a talent agent kind of scooped her up, steered her to a PR person, and all of a sudden she became the Venezuelan volcano. And so she was passing herself off as Latina, but of course she couldn't speak a word of Spanish. And so she would tell people that, you know, her English isn't so good, so I want to practice. So can we speak Spanish, or can we not speak Spanish and only speak English? And so here's her resting place right here. So after that, she wound up going to Hollywood, and again she got into these kind of jungle roles because of, you know, it was like she wasn't, you know, she wasn't quite leading lady material as far as her talent went. And I guess she could dance a little, and that was good. But, you know, I often wondered, you know, why didn't she take the Lena Horne route? I mean, Lena Horne was a fair-skinned African-American woman, but she was African-American, made no bones about it, was proud of it. But you can watch some of Acquanetta's movies, some of the clips, and I'll put some of them up. Problem is, honestly, and I'm not trying to disparage Acquanetta, I swear, but she just wasn't as talented as somebody like Lena Horne. Lena Horne had talent for days, and Acquanetta wasn't quite up to snuff. So there are two kind of rumors about what happened to Acquanetta's movie career. Again, she was active in the 40s, about the mid-40s, right around the time World War II ended, or actually about 1944, a year before World War II ended. Her movie career kind of slowed down, and there were two kind of rumors why. One was that she was kind of difficult to get along with on set. You know, she was kind of demanding and kind of thought more of her talent than what was really there, and or combination of the studio recognizing she didn't have that much talent. The other rumor is that she took a white actress home with her to Pennsylvania and tried to pass off her mother as her maid. And part of the reason I don't believe that story is because her parents and her family were, again, very prominent an African-American family in Pennsylvania at that time. And so I doubt very seriously if the mom would have put up with, you know, her daughter saying she was the maid. But that was the other rumor. So Acquanetta, at that point in time, moved to Mexico. And all of a sudden there are these pictures of her wearing like Mexican native dress, kind of, you know, like the dresses and things that they wore that Native Mexican-American, or Native Mexicans, excuse me, wore, you know, like the dresses and she wore hair and the hairstyles of the time in Mexico. And she wound up meeting and marrying this rich, super rich Mexican kind of playboy dude. And she had a son with him, but unfortunately the little boy died when he was about 4 or 5 years old. And her and the marriage with the father didn't work out, if it indeed was a marriage. There's a big issue about whether she was even really married to this fellow. She came back to America and resumed her film career after she met and married an artist by the name of Clive, I believe his name was. And this guy was a lot older than her, and I think it was Henry Clive, if I remember correctly. And he was a lot older than her, but he, she was his muse, if you will. And that marriage lasted for a time, till the early 50s. Well, yeah, about 53. She made her last major movie where she actually was billed was this movie called The Lost Continent with Cesar Romero. And Hugh Beaumont, who was the dad in Leave It to Beaver, was in that movie too. And it's pretty terrible. It was parodied by the Mystery Science Theater 3000 guys, and it's available on YouTube. And you know what? I think I'm gonna watch it tonight, because I love Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I don't believe I've seen this particular movie. And so, after that divorce, Acquanetta kicked around LA for a while. She was a DJ, and then she eventually met this car dealer fellow in Palm Springs, a guy by the name of Jack Ross. Okay, Jack Ross is a successful car dealer, and this is where the tie-in to Phoenix and the Valley comes in. So Jack Ross had several car dealerships out here. When I was a kid, I remember Jack Ross Lincoln Mercury, and Acquanetta and he used to do commercials, like local commercials. And Acquanetta used to also show up on the Wallace and Ladmo show, which was this kids TV show. And they treated her like she was royalty. I mean, you would have thought she had won an Oscar or something. And I had no clue who she was. And I asked my mother, and she goes, "Oh, she's just some lady that used to be in those old monster movies." And I go, "Oh, okay." But, in this age of cultural misappropriation, I mean, Acquanetta was something else. She passed herself off as Native American. If you go into Find a Grave, you look on her Wikipedia page, again, everything is murky, but she supposedly had this name, Bernu Acquanetta, which in Arapaho means, I don't know, burning water. It's something ridiculous. I'll put the actual quote up, but it's ridiculous. And I was reading a blog, and the fellow actually must have known some Arapaho or researched it, and whatever that cool water, mountain fire, or whatever the hell it was, doesn't translate into Bernu Acquanetta. So it's totally made up. And again, her real name was Mildred Davenport. She's an African-American woman from Pennsylvania. That's where she grew up. And again, in this age of cultural misappropriation, when she passed herself off as Native American, which is kind of a new one, but she did. And she and Jack Ross had 4 boys, and they divorced in the 80s. And again, I was reading a blog, and it said that when her friends and stuff would try to pin her down about the real Acquanetta / Mildred, she would, a lot of times, she was just always on, if you know what that means. If you've ever known anybody kind of in the entertainment biz, they're always trying to be funny, or they're always trying to be dramatic or whatever. And they said that's kind of how she was. And so she would never really kind of let on as to who she really was. So, and I mean, man, there are so many wacky stories about her and Jack. One that's probably apocryphal, which means it, probably didn't happen, but it's still a funny story, is that she supposedly caught Jack cheating on her, and she filled up his Lincoln Continental with cement some kind of way. I don't know, maybe she got a dump truck out or a cement mixer and filled it up. That's the story. Another story, I'll post a link up to it, was that I want to say in the late 60s, she was out dancing with her husband at this nightclub in Phoenix, and her husband believed that the daughter of the owner of the nightclub was dancing with literally Satan. Like she said, it was a handsome guy, and he looked down and he saw cloven feet and a pointed tail coming out of the guy's pants. And to put this in context, he had a heart attack, and he was telling this story from his hospital bed. So I mean, it's just crazy. I wish I could find some of the old commercials, because they were, like I said, just wacky. So in any event, here is Acquanetta's final resting place. I updated her location on Find a Grave, and I want to thank you guys for taking this journey with me. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next one.